Yeah, welcome back everyone to the 42nd episode of the Tundra cast. And once again, we got another very special guest. We got TSN sports anchor James Duthie.
So just first off, how did you get started at TSN?
Wow, you want the long version or the short version?
Long could be good, yeah.
So I started. I took journalism, and ended up as a news reporter to start my career. Because back when I started, I'm going to date myself as really old now, but TSN was really young, and most of the jobs were local sports jobs, and there just weren't many around. And so the only job I could get coming out of school was a news reporter job. So that was in Ottawa, and I covered fires and murders and politics and all those things. But I always wanted to do sports, and eventually got an audition with TSN. I did some sportscasting in Ottawa, and I didn't get the job, actually. A reporter named Lisa Bose got the job that I applied for. But the guy who auditioned me, named Keith Pelly, who now runs the European Golf Tour, he said he really liked me, and he said, I want to hire you someday. And then I took a job out in Vancouver and moved out to Vancouver for a year. And I had told Keith, I said, just don't call me for 2 or 3 years, because I want to move out to BC and live there for a while. And he called me in 6 months and offered me the job at TSN. And that's how I got my start. Awesome. I was hosting football and NBA. That was you guys would be way too young to remember, but my start at TSN was hosting. Here's an idea of my idiot dogs that you're going to see are now fighting over something. But yeah, I was the host of NBA. Same year as Vince Carter's rookie year, so that was kind of cool. Breaking in when he broke in, and I did CFL as well.
Right. And when did you start doing the hockey broadcast?
So that was 2002. And it's funny, I thought my career was tracking a different way. If you'd asked me, when I was 20 what I wanted to do, I would have said football play-by-play was kind of my dream. CFL, NFL, whatever. And I was headed that way. I'd done about 10 or 15 CFL games and was hosting SportsCenter. And they called me and asked me to host hockey. And, I love hockey. And so you're never going to turn down a chance to be the national hockey host on TSN. And that was the break I got. That's another longer, complicated story. They had actually hired a woman out of Vancouver to host the show. And they wanted it to be really funky and different, walking around the studio. And we had live bands and everything back in 2002. It was crazy. But it didn't work out. And literally 2 days before the season, my boss called me and said, can I come to your house? And, I got along well with my boss, but he never asked to come to my house before. So he came to my house, and I figured something was up. And he said, we want you to be the hockey host. And, so the next day, I think the season started 36 hours later or something like that. So it was whirlwind, but it worked out pretty well.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What are your thoughts on the struggling Canadians so far?
Is that personal, Rossi? Is that your team or what?
No, my team's Nashville.
Oh, because it sounded like there was a little hurt in your voice.
No.
I don't know. I think it's the curse of having a surprise run like that, like last year, when everything comes together, and you watch them do what they did in the first 3 rounds last year, and even hold their own for a couple of games there against Tampa. I think you suddenly are under the illusion, okay, this is the future for Montreal now. They're automatically a Stanley Cup contender, and everything looks great, right? You got, okay, well, we still have one of the best goalies in the world, and Cole Caulfield's going to be Rookie of the Year, and Suzuki's a star, and we filled all these other holes, the Josh Andersons and Toffoli's, and our D looks really great. And in reality, they went on a great run, and then you lose Shea Weber, and Carey Price deals with the issues that he's dealing with and all these other injuries, and everybody else. Cole Caulfield's having sort of, I was going to say sophomore blues, but he's really a true rookie this year. I think all those things just came together, and the expectations were way too high, and they shouldn't be as bad as they are right now, but they were never as good as they were back in the playoffs last year. So I still think they'll be fine eventually, maybe not this year fine, but they still have a lot of really good young players around that team, but the holes that they've had to fill, they just couldn't fill.
You just got to think, because, Carey Price has been up this entire year. Shea Weber is not going to play again. I mean, those are two huge pieces. You
Yeah.
know, not playing for your team. So, you know, that must be like a big reason why they're not playing well.
Yeah, I think that's all fair assessment. It's funny, like Shea Weber last year. If you went back to the trade deadline last year, they were ready to run him out of town.
Yeah.
He had been playing. He just wasn't playing good hockey, and but it really came together. And I think the Shea Weber you saw in the playoffs was, you know, the one we've seen most of his career, and the value that guy had on the ice in the dressing room, I think was just huge. So, yeah, I think that combination of things.
Right. Speaking about teams, which team has impressed you the most so far, and which team has impressed you the least?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd have to say the logo behind you is probably the team that's impressed me the most.
Yeah.
And it's close. You know, there's some teams that, you know, Minnesota and St. Louis have played great. I didn't necessarily expect that. And, you know, some of the teams we thought we'd be terrible, Buffalo, Detroit, have played, you know, surprised. Florida's been excellent. Carolina's been excellent. But I just think the Oilers are the team to watch. I'll tell you what, guys. I just had surgery, and a hernia surgery, which hopefully you'll never have. But when you get old like me and you want to still play sports, you end up wrecking your hernia. So there's this hospital in Toronto where I have the hernia surgery, and a bunch of guys my age and older going under the knife, and we're all in there for 3 or 4 days, and we have one TV lounge you can sit around and watch TV. And the Oilers Detroit game was on the other night, and it was about 15 guys crowded around the TV. And I don't get to watch hockey games with people a lot. I'm either in the studio with the panel, or I watch them at home by myself. My wife's not a big hockey fan. And it was cool for me to watch, you know, 10, 15 guys from all around the country sitting there and watching, and all of them talking about, you know, what a show the Oilers had become, how that is the must-watch TV of right now in the National Hockey League. And I don't know. I guess that's your team, Shaden?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just what a cool time for you to have them. I mean, a long season and things could go wrong, but after a pretty crappy decade, mostly,
Yeah.
I think if it comes together, and it's going to be, they're a show. That's, you know, they're just the best show on TV right now when it comes to hockey, I think.
Right. And I was actually at that game when, you know, Connor, you know, basically just like went through to 4 of the Rangers players.
You were at the game?
Yeah, it was insane.
How cool was that in the crowd?
It was awesome. Like, you know, it was Kevin Lowe's retirement night, Jersey retirement night. Just the context of the game, it was incredible to watch. It was probably one of the best games I've seen live in a while.
Yeah, those moments like that live are amazing. I was telling you early on about NBA. The Vince Carter slam dunk contest.
Oh yeah.
Which I know you guys have heard of. Was probably you're just kids or before you're born, but I was in the building that night in Oakland, and you know, just a slam dunk contest, right? But it was one of the most electric scenes where he did stuff, and you turn into the people. People were just like jumping off their chairs and falling down in aisles because they were just. It was insane, right? They'd never seen anything like this before.
Right.
And I think, you know, it's similar with McDavid.
Yeah.
So that's a very cool thing to witness live.
Sorry. Yeah, I've watched all the like videos about the Vince Carter slam dunk contest. I'm like,
yeah,
and it's just so like to watch. You're just like, holy.
Well, you guys have, and I mean those dunks. You know, you guys have seen everybody can do most of those dunks now, and you've seen cooler stuff. But at that moment, like nobody had done anything that looked like that, really, right?
Yeah, it was.
And so, yeah, it was mind-boggling. So, yeah, those are the coolest nights as fans. So that's really neat that you got to witness that, Shaden.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Do you think Alexander Ovechkin breaks Wayne Gretzky's goal record?
I gotta say yes now, and I thought my entire life that was one of the records that would never be broken as long as I lived. It just didn't make sense. Like, what's Wayne's number? 950 something,
I think
whatever.
894.
Sorry, of course I should know that. 894. Sorry, hockey host on TSN.
That's all right.
I'm bad with stats, so I always forget. So 894. So, you know, when you think about that, you go, okay, a 50 goal season for 18 straight seasons.
Yeah.
That's what 894 is, right? And that's 900. 18 straight 50-goal seasons is 900. That defies logic, right? And so for like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, it's like you see players now today slowing down when they're 30 or 31, 32 sometimes. So it just didn't make mathematical sense in my head that it was possible. And then, he kept on 41 one year, 54 the next year, 48 the next year, 57 the next year. And suddenly you look down and, I thought COVID might be the one thing that you'd say, okay, that's going to slow him down. You're going to, 2 half seasons in a row kind of thing. But I just think that whole Russian machine don't break down thing is true. And, I think he's probably going to do it now. I think he's got it set in his mind. You watch a Capitals game now, if they're ahead, he's out in the last minute every time with the empty net.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants him to get it. He's hungry for it. And barring, knock on wood, some sort of big knee injury or something, I think he's probably going to hang around long enough to do it. And maybe it won't take that long. Maybe it'll be, only 3 or 4 years from now.
Yeah,
right.
2 lockouts couldn't stop him.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. You spoke about your panel beforehand. So what's it just like working in the trade deadline and the free agency shows?
It's a lot of fun. I used to, a few years ago, I hated it because I guess there was pressure that came with it. And the idea of knowing that nothing might happen, not necessarily with free agency because stuff always happens, but with trade deadline in particular, knowing I had to fill 12 hours of TV, I kind of would get this knot in my stomach the couple of days before, a night before. But somewhere along the way, I just kind of embraced it as what it was, which is a day to, we got somewhere between 15, 20 really smart hockey guys in the same studio or close by. And it's just kind of a day to celebrate hockey, right? I think that's what it is more than anything else is people watch because I think people watch as much to see how we're going to fill the hours as much as anything else, right?
Yeah.
And you guys are all, you're sadists. You want to see us fail. No,
right.
You know what I mean, though, right? I think it's like rubbernecking at an accident scene. How are these guys going to talk for 8 hours when?
It's just you have to know.
Yeah. So I enjoy it now. It's still a long day. I'm glad when it's over. But you got side guys like Mike Johnson or Ray Ferraro and Craig Button and Jeff O'Neill, plus all the insiders. And I just sort of take it now as a day to hang out with my buddies and talk hockey for a while. So
yeah,
I end up I gotta harness this guy. I end up I enjoy it a lot more than I used to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, those are my favorite days too. Just stay home from school and just watch the shows. Because I mean, even when there's nothing going on, the TSN panel is always hilarious. I mean, there's a lot of interesting characters on there. I just love it.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who's a team that you could see going on a full rebuild soon?
Ooh, that's a good one. What are you looking at? Well, Pitt would probably be the most interesting, and because Crosby and Malkin are both, still really good, but if they were to fall off the radar, I remember I think it was Darren Dreger last year talking about the possibility, of them trading one of those guys, which sounds inconceivable. I can't see them. I can't see Sid going anywhere. I really can't.
Yeah.
But Malkin maybe if he could be healthy for a while. I think that would be the interesting one. I mean, the full rebuild they already have. It's such a pain in the ass.
It's all right.
They already have. They've sort of built around at the same time, right? So there are some young players there, but I think that would be one that would qualify. The Capitals are interesting because, I don't think they ever will because of the Ovi situation now. They they have their cup. They'd still like to win more cups. They still have a good hockey team. But I think the OV goal thing, becomes as big a story as, the Washington Cup chances for the next couple, 3 years. So those are the first ones that come to mind. I'm trying to think of, Calgary would have been a candidate this year if they failed, but they look pretty good so far. They're kind of buying into the Darryl Sutter thing, but that would be a core that definitely would have been broken up if this year was a failure. And, you could even say Toronto. I'm not going to say rebuild. That doesn't make sense. But if Toronto failed in glorious fashion again this year, that I think something would have to be done as far as moving one of the big main pieces there. Yeah. But that doesn't really qualify as a rebuild.
Yeah. Back to the panel once again. Who's just the funniest guy off screen that you worked with?
That is a good one. Jeff O'Neill is really funny. He's very self-deprecating, and he has a million stories about his career. He makes fun of his own being out of shape. That makes fun of the fact that he was a bit of a goal suck sometimes and a cherry picker in his day. So he has a gazillion stories that make me laugh. A lot of them are too offside, and I could never tell. But he makes me laugh. And, even guys like Drager's pretty straight on TV, but very funny. Drager's the kind of guy who's a practical joker. Yeah. So he's the guy who'll take your phone and, turn it to like Mandarin or something like that. So you can turn the keyboard language to Mandarin. So I'm desperately trying to find something to entertain my dog so he doesn't bark through the entire podcast, but I'm failing greatly. So, they all have the really funny sides, but I would say O-Dog probably cracks me up the most of any of the guys there.
Yeah. Okay.
Out of your 4 books, which was your favorite to write?
Ooh, that's a good question, Rossi. I would say the guy on the left was both the hardest one and probably my favorite to write because it was the most personal. It was not necessarily an autobiography, but kind of, basically I tried to write a book about stories that people might find interesting that happened over the course of my career and weaving my career in there and telling stories about guys on the panel and guys I've met, athletes I've met over the years, as you guys were just asking about. So I think that was probably the most fun I had writing a book, kind of going through your entire career. But at the same time, when you're writing about yourself, I find it very hard. And I don't know, I'm not sure why that is. I guess because when you're involved in the story, you don't want to make yourself look too good or too dumb or whatever, but you want it to be realistic. I think I end up looking dumb all the time in my stories, but that's okay. So that was probably the most satisfying in some ways. But Beauty's my most recent book was a lot of fun to do just because I was just the guy listening. I wanted that book to be as if you were out at a bar, with whoever the subject of the story was, Wayne Gretzky, Brett Hull, Connor McDavid, whoever, and they were just telling you a story. And so that was a lot of fun. It took a lot of work. It was a hard year writing that book, but that was a real, it's just getting those guys on the phone or in person for an hour or two at a time and having them tell stories was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And what's it like running your own podcast so far?
Good. I mean, it's very strange. When we started out doing a podcast a few years ago, I thought it was going to be kind of like your podcast, probably. You guys, this is a sports podcast, right?
Yeah.
And then it ended up not being that. And I found out that I guess I talk sports all day at work. And so we ended up just having 4 guys just talking about anything non-sports most of the time. We'll talk about sports, but we end up talking about our relationships and our lives probably more than anything else and all the stupid stuff going on in the world. And so That's fun. We sit down every week and have no idea what we're going to talk about, which is weird. But I get a kick out of it. For me, like I said, it's not. It's more just about spending an hour with your buddies shooting the crap. So
Yeah.
it's been fun. I'm technically totally inept, so thankfully I have somebody in Christoph who can run the show and tell us how to do everything, because I'd be useless without him. I lost Rossi there. Maybe you lost your mic, Rossi?
Yeah, his mic has been bugging like before the podcast.
Yeah, we lost you for a second, buddy.
Yeah, I'll just say his next.
There you go, buddy.
Are you good?
You're back.
Sorry,
You're
my
back.
dog just jumped on my
Hey, see how much we have in common?
Yeah, I
The
got
dogs.
I got 2 beagles, so I gotta keep them from howling. That way you don't just hear woo the entire podcast.
Are you guys both in Edmonton, or where are you?
I'm in Edmonton and he's
I'm in
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. And how are you guys buds, or did you meet through the online world, or what?
Yeah, just online. We have a couple guys in Toronto. We have a couple guys in Chicago. So yeah, we're just basically buds around the internet. Just got together and started this.
Very cool, very cool. I've only been to Wisconsin once. I went to do a story on the Packers back when I used to do more NFL. But I think that's the only time I've been through there.
Yeah, I live a lot further south. I live closer to Milwaukee than
to
Green Bay.
Okay. Did you have a question there, Rossi? Since you started to ask something before your mic went down.
I was about to ask, what was it like to receive the Gemini Award?
Oh, yeah, I've won Sorry, that sounds I was braggadocious. I've won a few of those now. It's funny. So, in the early years, it seemed like it was always myself and Ron McLean who were nominated, and Ron would always win. To the point where my wife would always go. They have a big night, to make it like the Oscars or the Emmys, where everybody dresses up and goes. And my wife would call it "Get Dressed Up and Lose to Ron McLean Night," because we'd lose every time. But and so then it's funny because you go to this thing, and I always feel like at award shows, maybe not the Oscars, but you can tell if you have a chance to win or not by your seat. Okay. Yeah. So every time I go to these shows, like, I'd be in row 28 or whatever, and Ron McLean would be in the front row. So I'm like, okay, I'm not winning this thing, right? And then there was one year I was in the front row. I'm like, okay, I've won, and I didn't win. So I was all screwed up. And I was like, Darren Dreger, the one time he got nominated, he always tells the story. He was in the balcony. So there was like no way he could have got to the stage. So he knew right away he couldn't win, right? So anyway, one year I am like right at the back. They did it differently that year, and there was like almost like a mosh pit where there was a few rows of people at the front, all the big Canadian celebs, and Ron was up there, and whoever else was nominated, Scott Russell or Scott Oak or something. Then there was a bunch of people mingling on the floor, and then there was some grandstands at the very back. And I was at the very back of the grandstands. It was Michael Landsberg and I were both nominated, and I thought, okay, we have no chance this year, right? So I started drinking. There was a cocktail party, and I had so I had about 6 drinks, and then the winner for best sportscaster is James Duthie. I was like, what? I was at the back. Did they say my name? But Landsberg's like, yeah, they said your name. I'm like, oh crap! And so all the way to the stage, it took me about 5 minutes to get to the stage. I was so far back. I kept thinking, okay, sober up. Don't embarrass yourself the first night you won. But awards are what they are. It's a Canadian award show. I don't think anybody cares probably, but
yeah,
it's nice. I've been able to win a few now, and it is nice to be recognized. I keep them in the basement where I work out, so I can pump iron every day and look at my trophies like a real
right,
like a real egomaniac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's it like being an ambassador for the Christian Children's Fund of Canada?
Yeah, thank you. They've changed the name now. They call it Children Believe. But one of the things I wanted to do beyond giving back was I kind of wanted to expose my kids to we've been sponsoring kids for a while, and this is one of those organizations that build schools and wells and such in really poor countries. And I wanted to, my kids grew up in Canada, suburbs, good life, right? Didn't really want for anything. And I guess I wanted them to experience what the rest of the world was like. Because we have no understanding really in Canada. And so I got to take each one of them on a trip when they were about 15 to one of my daughters went to Nicaragua. The other daughter went to Ethiopia, and my son went to Paraguay with me, where we have a child we sponsor. And just to see, these are like some of the poorest areas of the world, right? And just to open their eyes to how fortunate they are and how unfortunate other people are. And I think if you ask all three of them, it really changed them to see that. So that was part of my selfish desire, is to help my kids see the world and see how they can help other people around the world, I suppose.
Yeah. And one of your biggest stories you covered was the butterfly child. What was it like just working on that story? I mean, sadly, he passed away a couple years ago.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing him up, Shane. So Jonathan Pitra, and if any of the people that watch or listen to your pod aren't familiar with it, like just search on YouTube, The Butterfly Child. There's our documentary that we did on him, and there's a couple of others. And it's hard to watch. I'll warn you right now, but it's the bravest kid I've ever met in my life. And I won't bore everybody with the details, but he had this condition called epidermolysis bullosa, which is this rare skin condition, which basically your skin is like a butterfly. So if I was to touch you, if I was to just give you a little poke on the chest, Shaden, wouldn't do anything to you. But to him, it would go almost right through his skin. And so his entire body was like covered in lesions and bruises all the time. And they had to wrap him in a bandage. His whole body was basically wrapped like a mummy, and he would have to have a bath every 2 days where they would, just imagine your entire body being, scabs and sores and pains. Yeah. So kid did not have a day without pain his entire life, but yet he was probably the most, optimistic, courageous person I'd ever met. And he wanted to be a sportscaster. And so that's how I met him. And we got to be really good friends. And as you say, he passed away, unfortunately. Jonathan did, I guess 3 years ago now. And it was a big loss. But doing that documentary and helping tell his story to the world, they raised a ton of money. He did for that disease. I don't think anybody knew about that disease before Jonathan came along. So he did a lot of good in the world.
Yeah. And I think that's all the questions we have for today, James. Yeah. So
thank you, boys.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. It was a blast. Hopefully.
Hey, like I said, I was like you way back when. We didn't have podcasts and such, but just wanted to do something in sports. So I awesome. Wish you guys all the success in the world with the podcast, and let me know when it's out, and I'll make sure I'll send you like a retweet or whatever. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
All the best. Rossi, take it easy. Take care of those dogs. All right.
You too.
See you, boys.
Yeah.
See you, boys.